So a lot of people have been making a big deal out of the details that came out for Final Fantasy XVI earlier this week. I have read some of the details myself, and it's really interesting, but I've got this interview. I want to read this interview from GameSpot with Naoki Yoshida. I want to read the interview and kind of give my thoughts as we go along on what he's saying, and not just read a list of bullet points to you all, but really take in the context of the interview and really dissect each part. So that's what we're going to do in this video. If you're just now finding me, please subscribe to the channel, throw a like on the video. Helps people see my stuff, helps me out a ton. So without further ado, let's just get right into all this, because it's not a long interview, but it's got some meat to it. So let's check it out. So the interviewer asks, how much of a gameplay factor are the big Titan battles we saw in the recent trailer? What's the ratio to those versus more recognizable FF15 like human combat? Naoki Yoshida says, so what you saw in the trailer with that Titan battle, the icon versus icon battles, is only actually a tiny sample of the battles that we have in store for the game. In the trailer, you had the one scene where Shiva and Titan are battling. Actually, this is not a playable part of the game, this is a cutscene. But while that's happening, Clive will be in that same area, kind of experiencing the battle from a different perspective. Oh, that's cool. So while that's going on, you're going to be running around. That's really cool. I like that. I like the visual of that. However, later in the trailer, you saw a different type of battle with Titan involved. That part of the battle is actually fully playable. But again, what you've seen there is only a very, very small part of that battle. So the battles with Titan, for example, it's only about a 20th of what you actually get to experience. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to keep reading this segment before I offer my thoughts on that. So in that trailer, the battle was tightened up. Not like Titan, but tightened up, like tight. The battle itself goes through many different stages, many different phases, and all these change in real time. And the player ends up experiencing something that is large scale, action-packed, and high octane. And hopefully a lot of players will see that and think, I can't believe you created something that's so crazy. Okay, I like that. And again, that's just the battle with Titan. There are several other summon versus summon battles, and they are all unique from a game design perspective. So, okay, so right off the bat, it seems like there are absolutely going to be different ways to attack different battles. And I would say that probably goes into play with not just the Titan battles, but some other. There's going to be big things that you have to fight that aren't Titans. It's Final Fantasy games. There's going to be big monsters. There's going to be big, like this is sword and sorcery type stuff. But and when I say mechs, I don't mean like mech, but like maybe like a steampunky kind of thing or whatever. I don't know. But there will be different big type things that you have to take down in battle, and I think he said 1/20th of what to expect from the battles. So there's going to be a lot of battles where you just have to do different things and do different ways. That Titan battle, I could see that played out like a lot like Shadow of the Colossus. I think that'd be really wild. We've talked about the icon versus icon battles, but there are different types of battles as well. A lot of the battles that Clive will face just while journeying around the realm will be smaller scale. You have Clive versus smaller size enemies, or maybe waves of these enemies. And then, of course, as he progresses through that, he'll encounter elite enemies, or what you could call mini-bosses. And then he will encounter, finally, bosses, or these giant creatures. Okay, so yeah, the giant creatures. It's Final Fantasy. We knew they'd be in there. There are even times where Clive will encounter, in human size, the full-size icon himself. Alright. Shadow of the Colossus. I think that's kind of what they're going for, and if they are, that's amazing. That game is phenomenal, and just the stuff you have to do with some of the different bosses in that game are amazing. Which previous Final Fantasy games would you liken this game to, and how was Final Fantasy XIV served as a source of inspiration? As the game will be focusing heavily on action featuring these real-time battles, sometimes on a massive scale, these things that the series hasn't fully explored yet, Final Fantasy XVI will end up feeling like a truly new experience for many fans, unlike any of the past Final Fantasies. So it will still have that look and feel of a Final Fantasy game, but still feel different. One thing that did kind of serve as a source of inspiration, at least for the summons, was in Final Fantasy XIV, the story there and game design there also put a lot of emphasis on how we portrayed the summons known as the primals in Final Fantasy XIV. And so players will see some of those influences in Final Fantasy XVI and in how they're portrayed and how they appear in the game. Okay. Well, it does make sense because he saved Final Fantasy XIV from certain death, right? So that game was in its death throes before he took it over, and made it into what it is now. So Final Fantasy XV was very consciously about male friendships and masculinity. What overall themes is this game trying to express? One of the main themes explored in Final Fantasy XVI's narrative deals with the inevitable clash of values and ideals when you get multiple different people with different ideals in the same room. What is truly right and what is truly wrong. Again, because we focus so much on their dominance, and they have such a large part of the story, you're going to see how they think the world should be and what they think is right for the world. You're going to focus on those motivations and those struggles, and then you're going to delve even deeper and into darker themes when it comes to how people should live. People should live the life that was chosen for them or fight to break free from that kind of destiny. Okay, and the trailer does talk about that a little bit, like the crystals have dictated our destiny for far too long, that kind of thing. So you do get that theme from the trailer, but it also seems like there's going to be a revenge element to it with Clive. So that's the part I'm really kind of excited about. Are there plans to support the world with tertiary lore material, or is it more self-contained? Currently, there are no plans to create anything, for example, like a lore book like we had in Final Fantasy XIV, so the development team is currently working really hard to make the final release of the game a complete experience so that no other tertiary content will be required to enjoy or understand it. And so, how the story and the narrative progress is that we follow the life of Clyde Rossville through 3 different stages: his teens, his 20s, and his 30s. Okay, so there will be time skipping. That's something that we talked about with the ending of that first trailer. There will be time skipping. It showed him younger. I'm assuming that was him in his teens. We haven't seen him in his 20s yet. I think that's him in his 30s with the scar on his face or whatever. So we haven't seen Clive in his 20s yet, I don't think. So we'll see. But yeah, time skipping, and I'm fine with that. A lot of people don't like the time skipping element in a video game or a story or a narrative. I'm fine with it because sometimes you want to cover like a broad swath of someone's life, tell their story, and you can't do that without skipping time. So it's I like it. I like that. And because we're covering such a large amount of time with those jumps, it's safe to say there will be a lot will be happening in the background with regards to the state of the realm. And while we have a few side quests available in the game that will touch upon what's going on in the world in the background in addition to the main scenario, we also will have these in-game compendiums and a lot of stuff to read in-game that will hopefully help provide a lot of the lore to those people who wish to delve deeper into the game world. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. I want to see bookcases and bookcases full of just things I can read and explore, learn about the lore of this world, learn in the game. I don't want to have to buy an Ultimania. I don't want to have to buy something else to find out what is going on in your game. I have said that from the start with all these games that do this stuff. Even Final Fantasy VII Remake, you all know I love that game, but I have said repeatedly, it all needs to be in the game. I don't want to watch an animated adaptation of something. I don't want to go have to buy a book and everything. It all needs to be in the game. I'm fine with it being in different parts, but all needs to be in the game you're paying for and sitting down and investing your time in to play and learn. It's all got to be in there. I like this. I like this a lot, and I was hoping it would say something about that, and it did. There was implied nudity in the recent trailer. Is this a more adult M-rated Final Fantasy? So this is something you can say not just with the Final Fantasy series, but in general. Compared to the past, video game ratings have become more and more restrictive recently regarding what can or cannot be shown. That said, I do believe that ratings are very important to ensure that younger players, younger children, are shielded from extreme material. It's exactly why they're there. It's exactly why they're there, people. People complain about that all the time, but that's why they're there. But on the other hand, when trying to tell a story with difficult adult themes, these ratings can end up becoming somewhat of a hindrance, and then we talked about that too. Exactly, from a creative standpoint, they are a nuisance. and you find yourself changing things that you wanted to do in the game based on that rating. You wanted to show something, but because you have this certain rating that you need to go to, you need to move the camera away, and that ends up making the entire experience feel a little bit cheaper. Agreed. I agree on that. And so this time, to make sure that we could tell the story that we wanted in that way that we wanted to, we decided to pursue a mature rating in most of the regions that will be releasing the game. Oh my god, it's an M-rated Final Fantasy. We called it though, right? Everybody was calling this is going to be an M-rated Final Fantasy after that first trailer. Love it. Love it. This is walking the path of The Witcher. This is walking the path of The Witcher. I feel it. But again, this is not because we simply wanted to make the game more violent or the game more explicit. This is because we felt it was necessary to allow us to explore those more mature themes that the game tackles. I love it. I love it. And I love that he's just being very candid. He's being very open about his answers. He's explaining things. I mean, this is what I want to see more of from different creators, especially in the gaming industry. You can talk about your project without spoiling things, without being super vague. It's like, can you tell us about the water? Yes, absolutely. It's very wet. The water is wet. Absolutely. Yes, the water is wet. And when it's calm, you can see yourself on the reflection of it. Yes, absolutely. We already know that, numbnuts. Talk about it. Talk about what's going on. This guy gives a good interview. What is it like to go from revitalizing an MMO to now being in charge of the next main entry in the franchise? Is that something of a graduation, or do you feel just like, hey, this is just another Final Fantasy game, I'm going to do my best? To tell the truth, to be in charge of the next mainline Final Fantasy, it's a lot of pressure. And so you have the pressure from the fans who want a lot of different things and have a lot of different ideas about the direction and that the series should go in. You have that pressure of the history of Final Fantasy, it being a 35-year-old franchise and having all that history there, the weight of that history. You also have a lot of pressure from the development team itself because the dev team has expectations of what they want from the game. And so, to tell you the truth, no one should ever tackle 2 Final Fantasy games at once like I did. The one thing, though, that is different from Final Fantasy XIV is that on Final Fantasy XVI, I am producer and director. But luckily on Final Fantasy XIV is that on he said is that on Final Fantasy XIV I am producer and director, but luckily on Final Fantasy XVI I'm only the producer. Okay, I had to go back and reread that. It was starting to kind of run together. So the whole amount of pressure that comes with being a director is not on my shoulders. It's on the director's shoulders. So in that sense, there's a little bit less pressure on me. I know that when the company came to me and asked about the development team to tackle the next Final Fantasy XVI, I told them that we would do it as long as I didn't have to be director as well, because there's no way I could direct 2 projects of this scale at once. Absolutely, that was smart. That was smart. You can't bite off more than you can chew. You have to know your limitations. Everybody's got their limitations. You got to know what they are. Good on this guy. This guy's very smart. Everything I've read about Yoshi P, I've loved. I think the guy is amazing. I have not played 14, but everything I have seen him talking about 14 just tells me this guy loves what he's doing, but he thinks with his head and his heart, and I like that. I like that. That's something you need from someone in this industry. So to finish it up, that said, being asked by the company to create the newest mainline Final Fantasy XVI, was an honor. And it was an honor that was only made possible by what we were able to achieve on Final Fantasy XIV, and the amount of feedback that we've gotten from the fans and the amount of support that we've had from fans and players and the media around the world. You guys supporting us gave us this opportunity to take on the next Final Fantasy XVI, and for that, we're very appreciative. Okay, so that is where the interview ends. So to talk about a few points that I did see that weren't covered kind of in this interview. So I kind of gave my thoughts on all that. I think it's great. Now, this is pretty much going to just revolve around Clive. There will be the way I understand it, NPC characters that join you in the fight. Party in, party out kind of stuff. And it's basically revolving around Clive and the different sections of his life. There's going to be huge time skips, so it makes sense that they're going to do that from a narrative perspective. This will not feel like one of the old Final Fantasy games, and I think that's okay. I think that's okay, because this really is walking the path of The Witcher. I feel like The Witcher 3, namely, is inspiring a lot of this game. I feel like they're not talking about it. They can't talk about it. It's competition. They're not going to talk about that. But I feel like The Witcher 3 has really done a lot to inspire this game, and The Witcher 3 is amazing. Based on the things I'm hearing, and massive zones for this game, not like real big open world. From what I understand, it's going to be massive zones, and I'm fine with that. We saw Tales of Arise do that. We've seen numerous games do massive, lush, really lively zones, and it works out just fine. So I'm totally fine with that. This world, from what it sounds like, is going to have just a huge lore. So much lore to dive into. I think there's going to be a lot of good side quests. So I hope there's grinding. I don't know how EXP and leveling and all that's going to work, but it's a Final Fantasy game. Some of those elements have to be there. You can do not turn-based. Fine. You're not even really in charge of your party and stuff like that. Let's give it a chance. Let's give it a chance. Let's see how it works. But the leveling, you gotta let me grind, Yoshi P. You gotta let me grind. It's Final Fantasy. You gotta let me grind somewhere. So I'm really excited to see what more they do with this, because from everything I'm hearing so far, my interest level I thought had peaked, and I was super hyped for it. I'm way hyped for this game. We're about a year away from it, summer next year, right? About a year away from it. I think we'll see another trailer in the spring, maybe another trailer in about 3 or 4 months, something like that. From what I read somewhere that the next trailer is already ready to go, or they're already working on the next trailer. It's one of the two. It's one of those two. I can't be specific because I can't remember. It was somewhere on Twitter I read it, so take that with a huge, a rock of salt, a whole rock of salt. If I saw it on Twitter, take it with a whole rock of salt. But they're working on the new trailer, supposedly, so maybe this fall we might get another one sometime late spring, and then we're off to the races on this game. But I think this is being handled with a lot of love, a lot of care. I'm really excited about where they're going with it. The single player aspect, basically, I'm fine with it. Tell me a great story. The story is, I think it's a revenge story, and it circles around Clive. Now the gameplay, I didn't talk about this. So the gameplay, and they didn't talk about that in this interview, but the gameplay bullet points that came out, what I'm picturing in my head is straight up Devil May Cry. Straight up, like, when Dante gets the gauntlets and gets all the power-ups and stuff like that. It sounds like it's going to feel a lot like that, because we saw in the trailer where Clive, I think he uses a Phoenix ability because the Phoenix wing pops up over him. So we have been speculating for a long time, well, since that first trailer came out, that once you beat one of the icons or defeat an icon in battle, or at least that icon's dominant, that you will inherit that power or something like that. You won't become its dominant, but you'll inherit a piece of its power or something like that. So I think, yeah, I just think this is looking amazing. This is looking amazing. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. But anyway, you all let me know what you think of this. Are you excited? I know you're excited. I know you all are excited. Y'all been asking me to cover this, and this came out, so I know you're excited about it. I'm excited about it too. I cannot wait for this game to drop. I wish it was dropping this year, but take your time on it. Square Enix, Yoshi P, take your time on this. This sounds like it's going to be a very ambitious project. I love that it's getting an M rating. I love they're really going for that, because this will be the testing grounds for Square Enix in the M rating. What they can do, what they can get away with, what they can't get away with. And I'm really hoping that I had a piece of fuzz on my mustache the whole time. Like this whole video had a piece of fuzz right there. Just saw it. Anyway, I'm excited. Mature rating, big open zones, single player story. I think it's going to be a single character story with people jumping in and out. I think there's a lot of storytelling dynamics you can tackle with that, and as a player, you're focused on making Clive the best version of Clive you can, and you're not worried about leveling up your other characters and getting them, even if there's characters you don't want to use. So it seems like, to me, well, I'll save it for another video. This is already running long, but anyway, Post your comments below. Let me know what you think about that. I'm excited for this. I can't wait to see it, and I can't wait to play it. Anyway, let me know what you all think. Throw a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, consider becoming a YouTube member, becoming a rock star here on the channel. I'll be doing a lot more stuff for you all, my rock stars, later on this week. Until then, y'all have a great night. Be safe, be good to each other, and keep rocking. I will see you all in the next video. Take care. I want to say a quick thank you to my YouTube and Patreon members and supporters. If you would like to support the future creation of content on this channel, get some few extra perks and some art sent to your door every month, consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. Details and links are in the video description.